My boss announced my termination at the all-hands meeting on a Tuesday morning, 212 employees on the call. He used the word restructuring the way people use polite words when they want the action without the accountability. Dana's role is being eliminated effective end of month, he said, not looking at my camera tile. We wish her well. What he didn't say, what he had no idea was true, was that 3 floors above his office, in a boardroom he had never once been invited into, my name was listed as a voting equity holder with enough stake to block the contract renewal sitting on Friday's agenda. His contract. Stay with me, because by Friday afternoon, the only person leaving that company was going to be the one holding the microphone on Tuesday morning. My name is Dana Mercer. I was 36 the morning my boss decided my 9 years of work could be erased in a single calendar invite. He had no idea I had been sitting at a different table the entire time. It didn't start with the meeting. It started 9 years earlier, when I joined a mid-sized logistics firm called Arvex Solutions as a junior analyst, 2 years out of grad school. The kind of hire that companies make and then quietly forget about until results start coming in. The results came in. The credit, for years, did not. My boss, Regional Director Carter Flynn, had a particular talent I had underestimated for too long. He knew how to stand closest to the finished work right before the photograph was taken. Every quarterly presentation I built, he delivered. Every client relationship I managed, he introduced himself as the lead. Every internal report that crossed the executive floor, it had his name at the top and mine in the footnotes, if at all. I had let it continue longer than I should have, the way you let things continue when you're building something quietly and don't want the noise to interrupt the construction. 3 years earlier, I had been approached by an early Arvex investor who was looking to offload a portion of his equity stake privately before the company's anticipated growth round made the pricing less accessible. The amount was significant for me at the time. I moved carefully, structured it through a holding entity, and said nothing to anyone inside the company. The investor relations team knew. The board knew. Carter Flynn had never once thought to ask who else had skin in the game. I want to be honest about why I stayed silent for 3 years. It wasn't strategy at first. It was simply that the equity felt like a separate life from the day-to-day, a quiet insurance policy I paid into while continuing to do the actual work. I didn't think I would ever need to use it the way I ended up using it. The Tuesday meeting came after 3 weeks of signals I had been trained by 9 years of experience to read correctly. Carter had stopped including me in the Friday strategy calls. My name had quietly disappeared from the client distribution list for the Henderson account, the one I had personally rebuilt after it nearly walked 2 years earlier. And then the calendar invite arrived, labeled All Hands Monthly Update, no agenda attached. I knew before I clicked join. I just didn't know he would do it without a single prior conversation. Not a warning, not a performance review, not a closed-door discussion. 212 people and a sentence that took 11 seconds to deliver after 9 years of work. We wish her well. I didn't react on camera. I kept my face exactly where it was, neutral, still, the expression of someone who had been practicing patience long enough that it no longer required effort. I waited until the meeting ended. Then I sent one email, not to Carter, not to HR, to the board chair. 4 words. We need to talk. His reply came in 6 minutes. Are you available at 3? Bait. I was. The calls from colleagues started within the hour, the quiet, careful kind people make when they want information more than they want to offer comfort. Did you see it coming? Is it really budget? What are you going to do? I answered none of them, not because I was upset, but because I was already 3 steps ahead of the question. Carter sent a follow-up message at noon, formal, HR copied, the kind of message that had legal review written between every line. He used words like transition support and reference availability and end-of-month timeline. Professional enough to feel unkind, structured enough to feel final. What Carter did not know, what he had not bothered to find out in 9 years of taking credit for my work, was that Arvex's board operated on a 7-member voting structure for any executive contract above a certain compensation threshold. His renewal, which came up annually, required a simple majority, 4 votes. Going into that Friday, the count was 3 confirmed in his favor, 2 abstentions, and 2 outstanding. I held one of the outstanding votes, and the second outstanding vote belonged to the investor who had sold me my stake 3 years earlier, a man who had watched Carter Flynn's name appear on work he had never done closely enough to produce, and who had been waiting, patiently, for a reason to say something about it. Stay with me, because what happened between Tuesday morning and Friday afternoon was not just one career ending. It was the moment an entire executive floor realized that the quietest person in the building had been the one holding the door closed the whole time. The 3 o'clock call with the board chair, a measured, precise woman named Sylvia Okafor, lasted 40 minutes. She had been at Arvex since its 2nd year of operation. She did not perform surprise well, and she did not perform it at all when I told her about my equity position. She already knew. What she did not know was that I had decided to use it. "Carter submitted your termination paperwork this morning," she said, carefully. "Without consulting the board?" I asked. A pause. "He has operational authority over staffing at your level." "I'm aware," I said. "I'm asking whether the board was consulted." Another pause. Longer. "No," she said. "He did not consult us." I told her I intended to exercise my voting rights at Friday's session. I told her I wanted the termination paperwork held, not reversed yet, held, pending the outcome of the vote. And I told her one more thing, quietly, without anger, the way you deliver information that doesn't need emotion to land. I told her about the Henderson account, about the quarterly presentations, about 9 years of reports where my name appeared in the footnotes of work that had my fingerprints on every single line. Sylvia was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "I have everything," I said, and I did. 9 years of version histories, email chains, draft timestamps, client correspondence that began with my name before Carter's assistant reformatted the headers. I had kept records not out of suspicion initially, but out of habit, the habit of someone who had learned early that good work without a paper trail is just a story someone else gets to tell. Carter called me that evening. His tone was the specific kind of warm that people adopt when they have just realized they may have made a miscalculation. "Dana, I want to make sure you're okay. This was a difficult decision, and I want you to know it wasn't personal." "I know it wasn't personal, Carter," I said. "It was structural." A pause. "Right, exactly. Budget-driven, nothing about your contribution." "I appreciate you saying that," I replied evenly. "I'll see you Friday." Pause. Silence. He didn't know what Friday meant yet. By Thursday morning, he was starting to find out. The board packet for Friday's session went out Thursday afternoon. It included, as it always did, the full voting roster for agenda items. Carter's assistant called me at 4:17, her voice careful and professional in the way voices get when someone senior has asked them to make a call they would prefer not to be making. "Mr. Flynn wanted to confirm you received the board materials." "I did," I said. "Please let him know I'll be attending in person." Pause. The line was quiet for 3 full seconds before she said she would pass that along. I arrived at the boardroom Friday morning before anyone else. Sylvia was already there, which told me she had not slept easily either. Carter arrived 8 minutes after the session was scheduled to begin, which told me he had spent the morning being told things he had not wanted to hear. He looked at me across the table the way people look at something they thought was behind them and have just discovered is directly in front. "Dana," he said. "Carter," I replied. That was the entire exchange before Sylvia called the session to order. The contract renewal was the 3rd item on the agenda. By the time Sylvia reached it, the room had already shifted in the way rooms shift when everyone present knows that the formal proceedings are simply the last step of something that has already been decided. Carter's counsel had submitted a brief that morning, requesting the vote be tabled, pending clarification of a potential conflict of interest. The conflict of interest was me. Sylvia read the request aloud, set it down, and asked the room whether any member wished to second the motion to table. Nobody spoke. The vote proceeded, 3 in favor of renewal, 2 abstentions. My vote and the vote of the original investor were cast against, 3-2, with 2 against. The renewal failed by a single vote. Carter's contract, the one he had walked into that boardroom assuming was a formality, did not pass. He didn't say anything immediately. That was the part I hadn't fully prepared for. The silence of a man who has just watched a door close that he didn't know someone else had a key to. The termination paperwork was formally withdrawn the following Monday morning. HR sent the notification with no explanation attached, which was, I suspected, exactly how Carter had originally sent mine. Symmetry has a quiet kind of humor if you're patient enough to wait for it. Carter's exit from Arvex was handled the way executive departures usually are when the organization wants the situation to disappear faster than the paperwork can process it. A mutual separation agreement, a confidentiality clause on both sides, and a press release that used the word transition twice in 3 sentences. He was gone by the 2nd week of the following month. I want to be clear about something. I did not set out to end Carter Flynn's career at Arvex. What I set out to do was protect 9 years of work from being erased in an 11-second sentence at an all-hands meeting. The board vote was not revenge engineered in advance. It was a boundary enforced at the moment the crossing became undeniable. There is a difference, and I think about that difference more than people might expect. Sylvia asked me, after the session, whether I wanted Carter's role. I told her I wanted my own role, properly titled, properly compensated, and with my name on the work I produced. She said that was a reasonable request. It was also, apparently, the first time anyone had said it out loud in 9 years. The Henderson account client, when the internal restructuring was announced and my name appeared correctly on the account lead communications for the first time, sent a note to Sylvia that I was told about secondhand. He wrote that he had always assumed I was running the account and was glad the organizational chart had finally caught up to the reality. That note mattered more to me than the board vote. 3 months after the vote, the team I had been building quietly for 2 years, the one Carter had been taking to his own performance reviews as evidence of his leadership, formally reported to me for the first time with the correct title above my name on the org chart. Nobody made an announcement, nobody sent a company-wide email. They simply updated the system, and the system reflected what had always been true. I still hold my equity stake in Arvex. I have no current plans to sell it, not out of sentiment, but because there is something specific about having a seat at a table where decisions actually get made, after years of having your work presented by someone else at a table you were never invited to, that changes how you think about what belonging to something really means. Carter's name still appears in old company presentations from the years he was there. I stopped caring about that. The version history on those files still shows who built the first draft. That's enough. On the morning of the 1-year anniversary of that Tuesday all-hands meeting, I sat in the chair at the head of the strategy call I now run, looked at the camera, and said good morning to my team. Nobody mentioned the previous year. Nobody needed to. They told me I was restructured out. I owned part of the structure. If someone ever tries to write your name out of the work you built, make sure your name is somewhere on the building itself. Titles on org charts get changed. Names on equity documents are a great deal harder to remove. If this reminded you of someone who kept building quietly while someone else kept taking the credit, you already know who to send this to. And if you have ever been the footnote in work that had your fingerprints on every line, stay close. There is another story coming tomorrow.